the day I relinquished this idea that my journey is about my happiness, my success, my impact, my recognition, my visibility, my book, my best-selling thing, my bank account, the day I relinquished that is the day that the universe starts to say, listen, buddy, we got you. We got your back. We're going to look after you.
Welcome to the From Within podcast with Ben Osterveld.
Hey guys, Ben Osterveld here. I've got Philip McKernan on the From Within podcast. I don't know how many times he pays me to be on. I guess we'll have to sneak him on again. He keeps paying me. So no, that's not true. He's been my mentor for a lot of years. A lot of guys know who this is. Thanks, Philip, for jumping on the show again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So today I have a kind of a thing. I've been going through a little bit of your work, seeing some of your posts come up. And I think there's a lot of memes out there and we're like, oh, that's cool. You know, like, oh, nice quote, Philip. And I feel like, you know what? We don't know because it's so shallow out there, especially on social media. There's even guys reposting quotes just to start getting more algorithms. And if it's a hot ticket post, they'll repost it and boost it and all this other stuff. But I think when I see your quotes, it is not that. It's like deeply thought through. And it's almost like your identity. It's how I look at it. Like if you want to know Philip, there's these quotes these mean a lot. So I've got 4 quotes I want to get your opinion on. I want to know where they come from. What's the backstory? And I want to hear what they are. So I'm going to start with this one right now. When the pain is enough, we change. What the hell does that mean?
The best way I can describe that is through an anecdotal story. It's been around forever. It's not mine, but it's one that I often use and many people use, for example, is the 2 old guys sitting on the veranda having a beer. And the visitor noticed that the guy he's visiting, his dog, comes up onto the porch and curls up in a little ball and lies on an exposed nail. And the visitor goes, hey, John, your dog's lying on a nail. And the old guy goes, yeah. Keeps drinking his beer and he goes, but he's lying on an exposed nail. And John goes, yeah, he'll move. And the visitor goes, when? He goes, and as he takes the beer away from his lips, he looks at the visitor and says, when the pain is bad enough. If I can give you a more practical example of that, I was speaking at a conference in Vegas, let's just say 3 years ago. And there was a guy in the audience that put up one of those questions that is designed to demonstrate curiosity, but in actual fact, the motive is he's angry and he wants to catch the speaker out, one of those. And he said, yeah, I get the whole misalignment, living your passion. I get all that. But you know what? I've been in this job for years and I just don't know what to do next. And what's my option? And I looked at him and the flippant nature in which he said it. And I just said, with respect, I said, I'm just wondering, is the pain bad enough right now? And he just goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, sometimes the pain is not bad enough. He said, well, I disagree with you. And I said, well, let's try the theory on. I said, how long have you been in this job that you hate? And he said, 14 years. And I said, excuse me? He said, 14 years. And I said, sorry, I'm really bad hearing. What is it? He said, 14 years. And now he was getting angry. And I said, okay, cool. And he goes, well, the problem is I don't know what else I do with my life, which is often another reason or genuine reason or excuse that people use.
Yeah.
And what I said to him was very simply, I said, can I ask you, do you have children? And he said, yeah. I said, give me the name of one of your kids. And I should say it was Henry. I said, if Henry was standing where I am right now, or sorry, sitting where you are and you're standing where I am, and Henry, your son, in 20 years from now comes to you and is miserable and hates his job, what would you say? And without missing a beat,
I love that.
Breathe in, Ben, before he talks. He
Love
said, get out straight away. You don't deserve that. You're better than that. You deserve more. You're capable of whatever.
Yeah, I love it.
And then he stops and then people start like not laughing at him, but just going, oh shit. And he goes, oh. And then finally, this is the last piece of the story. I said, do you want that to be a conversation in 20 years from now? Or do you want that to be a lecture? And he says, what do you mean? I said, when Henry comes to you and says, Dad, I'm in this horrible job that's killing my soul. I've been in it for X many years. What should I do? If you start telling him what he should do with his life and how he should get out of it, if you haven't done it yourself, it can often become a lecture where your son is rolling his eyes internally or externally.
Yeah, whatever, Dad. Yeah.
Or do you want him to actually come to you with that incredible conversation because he's looking to you as a piece of inspiration, as somebody who's done it themselves? Or 3, Do you want that to be a situation where the conversation doesn't even need to exist because Henry's been brought up in an environment with an inspirational father who has the courage to put a value on his own skin and stop doing work that's meaningless and start looking for something that means something to him because he matters? That's what I mean by the pain is sometimes not bad enough.
It's such a simple meme. It's actually pretty famous around your world. Obviously, I think it's got to be one of the vintage quotes you've come up with, and I think you've based a lot of your work around that, to be honest. And
my personal life, Ben, as well. The pain got bad enough.
So here's the thing. I definitely want to use this as we go through these quotes and some of your thoughts, because it's a kind of a doorway into you. Let's bring it to current day for just a second. And we've got a whole world falling apart right now in some level. Okay. It's a whole stopped or feels like it's falling apart and all this. Like, I feel like there's a conversation around this. Like, is the pain enough? Like, what's happening to society right now? Is it like, I don't even know how to ask the question. I feel like I'm maybe trying to feel my way through this question, but I just feel like, how does that quote apply to the world shutting down, people's anxiety, going through everything like this? How does that, is this the pain that we need as society? Maybe that's the question.
Here's my perspective on this, is that the pain we're facing today has nothing to do with today. The pain we're facing today is being triggered by the environment and the landscape and the new economic landscape we're going to face beyond this. There's a famous, well, maybe he's not that famous. Most people have never heard of him, but there's a psychoanalyst who was born in the 1800s called Donald Winnicott. And he said, and I believe to my core, the meaning behind this quote, and that is, the catastrophe you fear will happen has already happened. The catastrophe you fear will happen has already happened. The reason that many of us don't fall in love again is because we don't open our hearts. We don't open our hearts because we're afraid of getting hurt. The reason we're afraid of getting hurt is because we know what it feels like. The reason that many of us stay in a job that we don't want and don't run the risk of becoming an entrepreneur and stepping out and opening your own business is because we're afraid of failure. The reason we're afraid of failure is because we've failed before.
Yeah.
That I would imagine that depending on your perspective and depending on who you are, I'm not saying there's no carnage. I'm not saying there's not real pain. I'm not saying there's real devastation in the world today, both death, whether it's physical death or economic death or spiritual death. But the reality for a lot of people is that actually today's triggering a lot of anxiety and worry that's old. And an entrepreneur said to me recently, he said, Philip, I'm reliving a lot of the patterns from 2008 and the last recession. I said, no. You're reliving patterns from your childhood that emerged in 2008 and that are re-emerging in 2020. And by the way, will re-emerge in 2030 because you haven't dealt with them. At what point are you going to stop and go back into your childhood and look at, and your adolescence, and look at your teenage years as it relates to your relationship to money and economics and everything else, to understand how these patterns are playing out today? So I feel that the people that are being most exposed today, leaving economics aside and leaving genuine like health, like the older population is definitely more at risk. But the people who are getting really rattled today are the people who live with a lot of control in their lives. And they build scaffolding around their lives called routines, called scheduling, called busyness, called expectations. And that scaffolding is being rocked and they don't know what to do because the uncertainty is exposing something that's been there for a very long time.
I love that. Uncertainty exposing. That's really interesting. We could create a retreat, Philip, and the entire thing is, they don't know this, but we create uncertainty the entire time. I'm not even joking. You literally could. That's pretty vindictive sounding or mean, but man, wouldn't that be something, just to create uncertainty and then have some real conversations?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example of this.
Actually, I think that's actually how all your retreats are now that I think of it. I think you've done that to me. I'm like, hey, here's an idea. I'm like, that is not enough. That's what they're like. I think I just figured out your business model.
I can tell you, day three in Ireland years ago. So I run this week-long experience called Brave Soul in Ireland. And on day 3, Ben, this is maybe 6 years ago. And it's somebody you and I both know, so it doesn't matter who the person is. Sure. But this person comes in and I'm almost certain it was morning 3, and he comes in and he's freaking out. And he comes in and he says to myself and this person that's supporting, he says, everyone's outside and no one knows what's going on. And let me just translate that.
Yeah.
Everyone outside is actually pretty relaxed and cool, and they love the uncertainty and where we're going next. I am freaking the shit out because my life does not operate like this. And I don't know what to do. I'm almost vibrating with uncertainty. And then fast forward another 2 days. It took this man probably 3.5, almost bordering into 4 days. His body was in Ireland. His mind was kind of there. His spirit was somewhere halfway across the Atlantic. And when he arrived wholeheartedly, boom, he gets broken open, and there was something very significant happen for him.
Please describe arrive wholeheartedly.
It's when your mind, your body, and your spirit is all in the same place at the same time. That it's not running to the future. It's not lost in the past. It's not looking for it's not consumed by expectation and not necessarily attached to an outcome. And that is even a deeper sense of arrival that I've even described about this man. This is a sense of unattachment and presence colliding together. And that is absolute presence. And I've never actually said that before,
Yes,
but that's,
let me say it again. Unattachment colliding with.
I don't even know what I said. I just felt it.
Well, it's recorded, so we can find it someday. I
Yeah.
think there's definitely some. I'm not looking for memes. I'm looking for meaning in it. Like I'm not like I don't care about the quote. It just wanted to sink in. I think there's something to that.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a different type of arrival for Philip McKernan. So what I'm finding increasingly more and more is I'm arriving in the work that I do in a way that I'm not following notes. I'm not attached to anything, and things are kind of coming through. And therefore, if someone says, "Can you repeat that again?" I'm making a note. I don't even know what came out.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I literally understand that. I think it's a good segue into this next quote of yours. It's simple to follow your mind, less easy to follow your heart, and takes tremendous amount of courage to even listen to your soul. What does that mean?
There's so much in that.
That's what I mean. It's not a meme to you. That's why I wanted to talk to you.
There's so much in that.
You've got 3 seconds.
That's
actually what you've
I'm out of here.
You've done that to me. How many times? Anyways, no, seriously, what does that mean?
You know what, Ben, in life, it's easier to fail at doing the things you don't want to do. It's easier to fail in the relationships you don't really want to be in. It's easier to fail in the business that you don't really want to be in. Because in the end of the day, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you can always say, yeah, my heart wasn't fully in it. My soul wasn't fully in it. And that's why so many of us, even the greatest musicians that have ever lived, the greatest artists that have ever walked this earth, the greatest, speakers that have ever walked this earth, they die. Even the ones that were famous die with the greatest music and greatest artistry still inside them. Because there's always a part of us that we're afraid to shine a light on and bring that out into the world. Yeah. There's a guy called Stanislav Petrov. And Stanislav Petrov was in the early 80s. He sat at the most sophisticated early missile detection unit that had ever been built. This machine, this computer that was flawless. And if it did make a mistake or there was some signal, some alarm, they could do some sort of diagnostic and basically find out whether, this was a flaw in the system or not. And I think it was the early 80s. The alarm went off. Bottom line is there was a nuclear missile coming towards Russia, most likely from the Americans, and Russia was under attack. And within a few moments, they had identified 5 or 6 more warheads on their way into Russia. And this man's job was to double check the system, which they said was flawless. He double checked the system, came back, you know what, it's still a green light, this shit is still happening. And his job was to pick up the phone, ring upstairs, verify, and then they would retaliate or whatever it happens to be. And he never actually made the phone call, not because the system showed any inclination that it was inaccurate. And in all the interviews he ever did, and I searched a lot of them, he said one thing that was very profound. This is a man, by the way, just before I give you the answer, or not the answer, but the conclusion. This is a man that has been cited as the person who prevented a world war. He has been recognized by heads of states and different awards all over the globe. They've made a movie about his life. And he didn't make the one phone call he was meant to make. And all he had to say about it was, I had a funny feeling in my gut. So it takes a lot of courage to connect with who you are at your essence and to listen to that intuitive guidance, because the intellect is so strong, and the intellect tells you what it thinks you should do and what it thinks society wants you to be. But your truth is always your truth, and that's your intuition. And your intuition, your feelings are your soul's expression. Your mind, its expression is thought. So to me, the whole quote is about, do you have the courage to understand who you are, not just intellectually, but emotionally, but then listen to that intuition beyond that. And that takes a lot of courage.
Does it take practice, Philip?
That's a great question. Yes and no, Ben. Yes, it does take practice, but no, it's not about practice. So when we think about practice, we think about reps, throwing a baseball, hitting a puck, whatever it happens to be. It's not quite as simple. And I know your question probably sees into that. I think what takes practice is trusting it, is testing it on, trying it, and then therefore trusting it beyond that. And I think that's the place. If you can build up a little bit of self-trust and confidence, momentum in it, well, then the answer to the question will be yes.
Yeah, you added so much context here to the answer. It's great. So we're going to the next quote here. When we're too busy seeking out opportunities, we often miss we miss the possibilities.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say it again. When we're too busy seeking out opportunities, we miss the possibilities.
You know, my life is, whenever I stop searching for something else magically or just appears in my life. So this is the case for meeting my wife. This is the case for combining the work that I love doing, which is coaching, and the sport that I love, which is soccer. I'll give you an example of that. And I've only shared the story once before, the other day, actually. Somebody said to me, how did you get into soccer? How did you get into coaching, two professional sports teams? Was it contacts? Did you market yourself? Was it this? Was it that? Whatever. And, at the end of the day, it's very simple. My kids went to a little Montessori school in North Vancouver. And I'll always remember bumping into a couple called Rob and Mary. And there's not that many couples I meet where I literally say to my wife, I'd like to connect with them, or I'd like to go for dinner, or I'd like to, go for a coffee someday, or do a play date with the kids or whatever. And it was just a very brief encounter, but there was just something energetically about them. And I had no idea Rob's background in soccer at this point. And then myself and Rob met later on at some little class thing where the kids were, it was a dad's day in the classroom or something. And long story short, I heard then that Rob had played in the Bundesliga in Germany at the highest level. And of course, that was an extra level of interest for me. And I don't mean interest in, what can he do for me? And how can I glean something out of him? And I was not even thinking about working in the space of soccer at that point. And my wife said, I said, do you want to follow up with Mary and offer them to come around for dinner? And she goes, that's going to be a bit of a problem. And I said, why? She goes, Maggie, our little daughter at the time, right, who is now 8, at the time would have been maybe 5.
Crazy.
Clocked Layla straight in the face.
That daughter?
That day.
Oh my goodness.
So Layla's their beautiful little daughter, and Maggie and herself are friends. But Layla took something from Maggie, and Maggie just goes boom. And she's never done it before, hasn't done it since, maybe to Charlie, her son. And I'm thinking, oh, well, there goes that relationship. So 2 days later, 5 days, I can't remember, I'm in the car park at the school, and Rob pulls in, and I roll down the window, and I said, so do you want to hand me the lawyer's letter, or is it just going to be in the mail? Because what are you talking about? I said, Maggie, she hit Layla. I goes, for God's sake, she deserved it, or something like that. And I knew we were going to be close friends. Long story short, he introduced me to this guy called Kieran. Kieran, who lived in Denver. We moved to Boulder. I go to Denver, meet Kieran. He rings me one day and says, do you want to go for lunch? There's a few of us going for lunch. 2 weeks later, I'm going for lunch. I'm sitting down across from a guy who's wearing a Colorado Rapids soccer jersey. And this guy goes, you, Colorado Rapids guy, and McKernan, you guys need to meet. 3-4 weeks later, we're having a coffee, and now I'm working with the team. That's my life. My happened with my wife.
It is so your life.
So Philip McKernan.
I've been on the Philip train for a while, watching from the close quarters. I get it.
It's so me. And what I'm talking about here is, it's not that I don't get up and do things, but I think when we have goals and dreams and aspirations, and we're so attached and we have tunnel vision, We've been taught to think that that is the only way to achieve anything. I'm not saying it doesn't, but sometimes you achieve something and you get there and you go, shit, I think I missed a step because this is not turning out to be quite what I thought it would be. I just love people to be a little bit more open to see what comes. And the last way I'll describe it is you're sitting in the bar drinking your gin and tonic. And you're drinking your gin and tonic and you're staring at the door because you're waiting for Miss Perfect or Mr. Perfect to come in. And you've literally mapped it out, the perfect human being. You know what size they're going to be. You know what they do for a profession. I've literally worked with clients who've done this. You know they're going to be a yoga teacher. You've it all mapped out and you've got this crystal visualization of the perfect specimen. And as you're sitting there drinking your gin and tonic looking at the door, the man or the woman serving you the drink, you're not even paying attention to them. You're not even looking at them. And that actually could be the greatest love of your life. Right there, right in front of you. But you're too busy looking into the distance about hoping someone will come over the hill or around the corner. And often the very things that we want to do, Ben, in life, I don't think you know this. Did you know I wanted to be a priest when I was a kid?
I did.
You did know that?
I did know that.
Okay,
yeah.
we obviously have a very intimate relationship.
We have a long relationship.
I wanted to be a priest. The other thing is I wanted to be Indiana Jones. And I don't mean literally a priest as in preach and whatever, because I don't even remember any of the sermons or the thing. But it was, and it wasn't being heard. It was, I wanted to impact people's lives.
Impact people. And that was your filter at the time, yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to find a voice that I didn't have. And I also, when I looked at Indiana Jones, I just thought he was everything that that represented the opposite
Adventure.
of who I thought I was.
Yeah.
And good looking and didn't give a shit and cared deeply. And would you believe it right now? I'm not a priest, but I actually realized literally the other day on the sides of mountains in India, on the sides of mountains, which you've been there.
Yeah.
On the side of the ocean, on the side of cliffs in Ireland. I don't give sermons, but I hold space for other human beings in an adventurous capacity, being around the world, and in a speaking capacity. So when we're young, we have these ideas that I believe that we forget about that actually can inform the rest of our path. They don't go away, but we don't think about looking to our little selves and our childhood. It has to be way more complex than that. And therefore we look out into the abyss and so sometimes we get lost forever.
Yeah. It's awesome, man. Super awesome. So we both are entrepreneurs. We both will create before take a job, obviously. And there's a lot of people that are business-wise in listening to this. Not everybody. A lot of mums actually, I think, listen to this show. And but entrepreneurship is a really big deal. Obviously, that's huge in my world. And this quote kind of is interesting. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Is your quote again. Entrepreneurship is lonely, but being a visionary is even lonelier.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't expect any of these. Yeah. I mean, I think entrepreneurship requires you to, I mean, it's really about, what we're talking about here is visibility. That's what we're talking about.
Explain that. That's not a normal connection for the average Joe. What does that mean?
Okay. We're talking about visibility. We're talking about stepping out into the world. Yeah. And the extent in which we step out to the world is the extent in which we are seen. The extent in which we are seen is the extent in which people actually get to see all of us. And a lot of us have parts of us we don't want the world to see. There's parts of us we're ashamed of. There's parts of us. Yeah. So therefore, I think entrepreneurship can be very, very lonely. I mean, soccer, for example, I spoke to somebody the other day who plays at a very high level, plays in front of thousands of fans, literally gets mobbed when he goes to do autographs, has, a big following on social media, plays with a team, and is extremely lonely. So loneliness, I don't think we really understand loneliness as it relates in society, because we think it's about just more people. It's not about more people. It's about real depth of connection. So entrepreneurs, in order to be an entrepreneur, it means that you have to step out and you have to lead. You have to step out and put a flag in the ground. You have to state that you are going to be something, or you're going to not be something else. You're going to lead the charge to some extent. And that is a type of vulnerability that most people actually try to avoid. Now, if you want to step out into the world and be an entrepreneur, but do something that is an extension of who you are as a person, because with respect, anybody can set up a window cleaning company. Anybody can set up a carpentry company. Anybody can set up a car wash company. It doesn't mean they're going to be successful. That's not what I mean. But anybody can actually technically do that for the most part. But if you were to step out into the world as an entrepreneur and actually do something that's an extension of who you are, something that's very close to your heart, that's a different animal. That's a different scenes. That's a different sense of vulnerability. And what I mean by that, Ben, is I often work with people who, let's just say, this iPhone I'm holding up here in my left hand represents what they do today. They're in a job or they're in a business and they're not getting a lot of fulfillment. They've got this is a glossy little pen, not an expensive pen, but a glossy pen. And this pen represents the new idea. This is the cool idea. And what often the mistake we make is we do this. We have this idea outside of ourselves and we start to look at it. We start to put a business plan around it. We start to imagine it. We start to dream about it. We start to get very excited about it. But excitement and passion are not the same thing. Just because we're excited does not mean that's what we should do for the rest of our lives. So what they do here is they have this idea outside of themselves. They jump wholeheartedly into this idea, not just in terms of their energy, but they build scaffolding around this that they almost marry this idea. I'm asking them to date this idea first. Don't get married.
Yeah.
Often when we're very close to our truth and seeing something in ourselves is the very time we buy a puppy, have a baby, or build an extension on our house. I'm not saying those things are wrong. What I'm saying is sometimes those things are distractions from the realization that our truth lies elsewhere. But here's what I'm finding. It's not necessarily this, nor is it 100% this. It's what lies beyond both. And the reason that we get attached is because we don't have to execute the very thing that we want to, because if that fails, Ben, it's the extension of who we are. If that fails, there's nothing else but darkness below it. And when you do something that's an extension of who you are, that requires you to be a visionary, not just an entrepreneur. And a visionary, in my personal view, is somebody that does something that changes their world, but it's always something that changes the world in a positive way. And that's a difference between a visionary and an entrepreneur and somebody who chooses to work for an organization all their life. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I feel like we could do a show on that topic. I guess almost any one of these topics, to be honest. It's really cool to be able to have a little doorway into Philip in this way. It's not just shooting the shit. It's kind of understanding a little bit more of, who you are. When someone says something, we just think, oh, cool. That sounds good. But to actually take the time to really understand what that means, I'm super, super excited that we're recording this. So one more here. The deeper you go, the higher you fly. So this is something that aligns to my entire world of from within. I'd like to, so again, like I could read it and assume that I know what it means. And that's why I want to ask you, what does it mean?
Yeah. There's so many ways I could try to approach this. Is that just the work that we do and navigate the interior work that we do in ourselves, the deeper we go into our own narratives, our own identities, our own pain, the higher, the lighter, the greater impact. We can actually get to a point where it almost feels like we're soaring, like we're actually literally flying in the world. And I don't mean that literally, but I mean that it's as close to that as I think we can get. In other words, you feel a sense of lightness, a sense of knowing, a sense of confidence, a sense of clarity in the world, a sense of purpose and meaning. And also you start to vocalize yourself into the world. You speak into the world. You speak your truth into the world unapologetically. A real life example of this is, I'll give you a quick example. I just give you another soccer one if you don't mind. But I was working with a goalkeeper.
Can you make it hockey? Just curious.
No, I only work with meaningful sports.
You should thank me for setting these up. It's just like volleyball. Here you go, Philip. Have fun with this one. Anyways, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What? Yeah.
You're talking about some soccer
field
games
hockey or ice thing that you guys do.
Field hockey. I don't know what that.
So
means.
I'm working with a goalkeeper. And the goalkeeper said, why is it that I'm afraid of making a mistake in the opening game of the season? I said, great. So this has never appeared before. And he goes, no. I said, so you've never ever worried about, making a mistake in a game before? He goes, well, I suppose now that I think about it, yeah, there has been a couple of times. And then I asked him a couple of questions. Turns out that this has just been something he's carried his whole life. And then he asked the classic question, how do you get rid of that? I said, how do we get rid of what? How to get rid of the thing you just asked me about a minute ago? He said, yeah. I said, well, you don't even know what you're asking yet. You asked me, how do I get rid of feeling the fear of making a mistake in the opening game, one game in the future. It turns out it's with you today, and it's been with you for the entirety of your professional career. So let's get clear on what you're asking to get rid of first before we try to get rid of anything.
It's a great point. Love
okay?
That.
Because you're asking the wrong questions.
Yeah.
I said, number one. I said, number two is, why are you afraid? I put the exact question, why are you afraid of making a mistake? He goes, well, I thought that's why you were here. And he goes, well, it's not down to anybody in specific. I said, it's not like I'm afraid to make a mistake in front of anybody in particular. It's just a general, there's no such thing as a general sense of fear of making a mistake. It always comes back to a name or a person. I said, okay, let's imagine this. It's the opening game. It's a windy, blustery day. The wind is swirling around the stadium. The ball is crossed in from the right wing, and the ball is floating through the air. And you take 2 steps and you jump up into the air to grab the ball. And as soon as you leave the ground, you get a bit of a knock. And as you're moving through the air, you just go, oh shit, you've just mistimed your run or your jump. You've mistimed the leap into the air in relation to the trajectory of the ball. You manage to get the tops of your fingers to the ball, and as the ball goes over you, as you start to plummet towards the ground, before you hit the deck, you hear the screams and the shouts of the opposition fans as the ball enters your net. You've messed up. As you lift your face out of the dirt and you look into the crowd, who's the only face on earth you do not want to see looking at you. And he just goes, oh, shit.
Wow. So powerful.
He just goes, my dad.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's talk about your dad.
not the opening game.
Let's talk about your dad as it relates to expectation. Let's talk about the conversations you've never had with your dad. Because most of us, Ben, if you think about an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old and they score a goal, and all, they run around like ants. Hockey, same thing. They're flying around the ice. Mm-hmm. And the kid scores a goal. First thing he does, boom, turns to the sideline, turns to the glass and says, Dad, did you see me? Mm-hmm. They don't say it, but they say it with their eyes. Mom, did you see me? Did you see me?
Yeah.
Do you want me to do it again? Did you see me? Will you see this time? And unfortunately, in the current world, and I don't mean to be critical to parents because I'm guilty of this myself, when those kids look around, they see their parents on iPhones and they see their parents on their computers and they see their parents, whatever. So what they're looking at is this little square device or this little rectangle device is often more important than the kid themselves. And that is the messaging we're sending out into the world. But I don't want to go down that path because it sounds like I'm lecturing, and that's not my intention. And what happens is we carry that. So there's a point, and there's one other key thing to this, Ben. There is a point where that goalkeeper and every other human on earth has to stop when they're 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 and go, okay, I'm not playing for my dad anymore. I'm not running from poverty anymore. I've got to stop running from what I don't want, and I've got to start to pivot into who I want to be in the world and who I want to be as a sports person, because the other is very exhausting. And it's external validation. The other one is actually a sense of knowing and being and doing the work and expressing yourself in the world the way you want to and need to. They're very different. We could talk about that for hours. Maybe I shouldn't have brought that in. It's probably, it's probably layering in too much.
That's great. So just, we've got a few more minutes, and I wouldn't mind I think people are really getting to know you here on understanding a little more philosophy about where you come from. I think you definitely put yourself out there quite a bit, especially right now. I see you quite a bit out there. But I feel like I know Philip in a way that I feel from the inside. And that's why I like to show this, because I think there's a lot more to Philip than people actually see. And so I got a few questions for you that are just a little bit different.
Actually, I'm suddenly busy. I don't think I can hear you.
Yeah.
You're breaking up.
It's funny. I actually knew that's how you're going to feel.
Let's go.
So here's the thing. So I don't see you as a businessman. Okay. And the more I get to know you, I don't think you're a businessman, but just let me follow through. I don't mean to take a shot at all, but I just don't see you as a businessman. I see you as a man that does everything and defies all the rules. You do things in my limited business perspective backwards. You do things that just shouldn't work, but it does for you. And so why? Why does that work?
I'm just curious, is that an insult or a compliment or just somewhere in the middle?
Depends how you take it, I guess. Take it however you want. I think I think I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I think,
no, I'm kidding.
Like this isn't, I don't think this is new.
It works because it's meant to work. It works because there's something, because it's not about Philip McKernan. There's some spiritual factor here that I can't put my finger on. It works because I believe that I'm following my individual truth. And when you speak your truth, when you follow your truth to the best of your ability, the universe will conspire. I always say that, there's certain tests the universe provide you. And one test for me was, I'm sitting in my parents' kitchen many years ago. I have $200 in my bank account and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And back to your point about pain, the pain just suddenly surpassed the pain of not doing what I've always wanted to do. Finally, just past the pain of not doing it, or the pain of doing something else, I should say. And I feel that the universe will then test you, and it will flick you a few crumbs to keep you going. And when it knows you have conviction, and when it knows that it's bigger than you, it's not about Philip McKernan, it'll present you with the whole goddamn cake. And I feel it works, Ben, if that's the case. And sometimes I feel it doesn't work myself, but overall I feel it's moving in the right direction. It's because I'm letting go of any type of attachment. I'm trusting the universe and myself, and I'm doing the work I'm meant to do. But most importantly, it's not about Philip McKernan. The day I relinquished this idea that my journey is about my happiness, my success, my impact, my recognition, my visibility, my book, my best-selling thing, my bank account, the day I relinquish that is the day that the universe starts to say, listen, buddy, we got you. We got your back. We're going to look after you.
It's a compliment, Philip. It is. Powerful, man. It's, I'm in the world of business. I still don't know if I'm a businessman or I'm just an artist. I still go back and forth on that, to be honest. So I think I asked you that question because it bothers me a little bit, in the sense where I know where there's, remember back in the day, this is way back, and it's funny. I wasn't planning to share this, but I remember coming back, and it was our very first year together. I spent $20,000, flew somewhere, built a business called Journey Investments. Remember, you remember that? And I feel like so just for the people listening, I was in real estate investing. Obviously the crash was happening and things, I knew I wasn't in the right alignment, and Philip was challenging me. So I figured it out. I was going to do rent to owns and help people with their investments and mentor people into that. And it was like this, I don't know why I did it, but it took about 10 minutes to realize I just wasted $20,000. And it's funny though, because I feel like that's been the journey. That's been, if you actually look at it, and I think that's why I actually come up with the question, because I watch you guide your life, and I don't think it's all right. I don't think that you've made right decisions all the time, but the way that you trust your gut is the reason that I'm just like, wow, you have balls of steel to trust your gut. And that inspires me, because I think I'm the same way. And I think that's what I want. But it's just interesting to think that journey is from like colliding this business mentality into this other thing, which is whatever, destiny or the spiritual side or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So I you know what I'm talking about, Philip.
Yeah.
From back in the day, and that's, I've been doing that for a long time, trying to move toward my own truth. That journey has been 15 years or 10 years, whatever it's been now. And I think that's where it's like, there's this business side that's really skilled and really good. And then there's that other side that doesn't make sense.
And that's the point. It doesn't make sense. I feel that I knew who I was to a large extent. I knew who I needed to be. And then I betrayed myself. I went on a journey away from myself. And for a large period of the middle of my life, if you like. And I try to be everything the world wanted me to be. I try to be everything I thought the world wanted me to be. I chased everything I thought I wanted to be, because I was living in my head. One thing I will say, maybe it's not the time or the place, but I think you're an artist who happens to be good in business. I don't think you're a businessman who may be an artist.
Yeah, that's not
That's
a
my
surprise to me. Yeah.
that's my
Yeah, thank you.
assessment of the situation.
Oh, so Philip, question for you. Well, we're keeping it real here. I don't think there's any other way with you. What are you struggling with? And if you don't want to share, that's okay. I just feel
I'll
like
share right up. Anything you want.
What are you struggling with?
I would have said ordinarily, if this was any other day or any other week or any other month, I would have probably said parenting. But the irony of that is that I've actually really shifted, like significantly, in this time of isolation. It's been hugely fulfilling for me, and shifting into that in a big way. What I'm struggling the most with right now is feeling so much overwhelm in the world, and actually feeling that internally. Literally feeling the pain of so many millions of people around the world. I've spoken to probably, Ben, in the last 3 weeks, and I'm not exaggerating, 3,000 people, not independently one-on-one, but either, groups of 20 or a group of 100, or maybe 2,000 is a slight exaggeration, but definitely well over 2,000. And I'm feeling the effects of that. Also, I have an assistant, Amy, who's basically the central hub of our entire we call ourselves a small boutique business, a coaching business, but she had to step back because she's completely overwhelmed with, I obviously won't get into her personal story, but with the kids at home, and her husband's not around because he's working. So she rang me last week. I know she wouldn't mind me saying this, but she was really upset, and she's had to step back out of the business. So I'm carrying the weight of a lot of responsibility. And I oscillate between, self-care, which is I'm a massive advocate for, and taking space. And the second thing is I interviewed a doctor called Dr. Mallon. Oh my God. I just did an interview with this guy, Paddy Mallon, who's a specialist in a hospital in Ireland. And he said he hasn't had a good night's sleep since January, because he saw this thing coming, and he said, this is the real deal. And there's a part of me feels, self-care is important, space is important, but right now the world needs some support. I just happen to be somebody that has spent my whole life trying to zone into my gift, and I'm not going to hide from that anymore. So just feeling a lot of weight around what's going on in the world and how much people are suffering, and just feeling that energetically myself.
I am so happy you shared that. Like, you just described what I'm wrestling with, like, to the T. Like, I feel I have a responsibility as well. I know how to support people, and I'm strong enough to support people, and I know I can help people. Yeah. And just, what do you do? Right. I think there's a part of it I've let go of that to some level, because it wasn't healthy. Like, I was really carrying this responsibility. So what are you doing with that?
Naming it, shining a light on it. Sometimes that's enough. Recognizing that's there, and then I am taking time out and walking in nature and taking like days off and stuff like that, even despite all the uncertainty. And then there's the real reality, Ben, that 95% of my revenue is wiped out on our business activity, because we and I believe, and we've doubled down on live interactive events. That's my specialty. That's what we believe in.
It's magic. Yeah.
So there's that reality, but I actually trust more and more, increasingly more and more, that that's going to figure itself out, whatever that means. And the other one is that, honestly, there's a part of me going that this is my time to be here and to support the people that have supported me in certain times. This is my time to support them in uncertain times. And actual fact, maybe there's nothing more to do with it other than recognize it's there and continue to lean in and serve and lead a bit more rather than coach. I feel like this is the time to lead a bit more rather than just coach. The future for me, though, is shifting, that my work is going to be all about supporting the leaders that are going to make an impact in the world. That's something I've become very, very, very crystal clear about.
Awesome.
And that's all I have in that right now. Don't have a magic answer to that one.
It's just not every day you get to talk to someone, and you're a leader, and you've got a big footprint, and it's cool to be able to talk to someone about what's really going on in the midst of it, because it gets so packaged after it. When I moved from Ireland to this, and you've said the story, like, it's so packaged. No one knows the inner struggle, and I love when you're catching someone in the midst of it. Yeah, because it's like you just remember, like, in the midst of it. I try to. When I'm coaching people, I try to video call, and I try to do some video journals and get them to video journal their process, because you forget very quickly the struggle. once you've overcome it. I don't even know who I used to be, Philip. Like your thought of me when we first met, I have no freaking clue who that guy is. If I saw him on camera, I think I'd be like, holy shit. And I feel like that's why it's really cool to be able to catch you in your struggle in a way, right? And hear about it. And think it really makes it relatable to people. I love that. And it's encouraging to hear that how you're dealing with it right in the midst, right?
Yeah.
That's real leadership.
There's
That's leadership. Well, Philip, I don't need to fill time. I don't feel I need to fill all the time. I feel like this episode is very, very good. I think it's a good mix. Unless there's anything that you want to add or say, if you got something on your heart, your gut, or anything like that, we've got some time here, and it's your time. If not, we can wrap it up and put this in a bow, because I think it's a nice episode.
Yeah, I've actually got nothing, Ben. Typically, I'll have something else I want to say or could say, but no, I've got nothing. I think we've covered a lot, and as you said, there's no point just filling space for the sake of it. So no, I'm happy and I'm delighted I'm here, and I'm very grateful for this, and I'm proud of the work you're doing and who you've become, and the courage that you've demonstrated over the years to never stop and never pursue it. And it's amazing to watch. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's always a privilege. Doors always open. Thanks, Philip. I'll kill the recording now, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.